Hello, welcome everyone.
We moved it to February because of the time of the year that the classes started and everything else. So we're excited that you're here joining us. This is an important opportunity for us that I'm the chair of the Social Justice Council. And what we're here to do today is to talk about this is one of our conversations of really a conversation about social justice at Essex County College. And all of the various organizations and bodies here are in support of this. This is an endeavor that's brought to you by the Criminal Justice Program, the Student Life and Activities is always a partner of ours for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, for Academic Affairs, for the uh, Paralegal Studies Program, for Student Affairs, for the Social Sciences Division. I know I'm missing somebody. Well, at the end, we'll come back and I'll mention all the other entities that are involved in helping to make this possible. But I do want to thank all of those folks here. The people who've been working arduously on this committee are Shadiqa Horge, Linda McDonald Carter, Patrice Davis, myself, Professor Penderhughes, um, Yelena. Uh, I remember Yelena's, Shadiqa help me out. Yelena's last name. Uh,
Lovin Cola, I believe. I may not pronounce it
your
correctly.
voice is hard to hear. Oh, maybe it's me. Okay, and then we also have I don't want to forget Dr. Steplight Johnson, and then there's a host of other folks who've been working in various capacities to help make this happen. So we thank them all for their assistance, for their participation, their engagement. This is what we all have to be concerned about: the successful considerations of social justice. So here at Essex County College, we are concerned about how social justice plays itself out, and what are the to be sure that we're thinking about and concerned about how students and how the community at large looks at issues of social justice. And this is not just a social justice issue for our various for the Africana Institute, for instance. No, this is a social justice issue for Essex County College. So whether you're on the security, you're on student life and activities, you're in the bursar's office, you're in financial aid, uh, any place and every place that we are here at Essex County College, we're students first, and not only students first, but we are also concerned about social justice abroad across the entire body of the institution. So these four events that are being hosted by these various departments and programs here at the college, and we are striving to make sure that everyone knows that Essex County College sees social justice issues, that the rights and everything else about people are appreciated, considered, and understood, and that we're advocating for them, and we're doing this not on a just the Essex County College level, but on a for Essex County and New Jersey, and we're moving it beyond there. So, with further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our interim president, Dr. Augustine Boachi. He is going to say a few words and to make sure that you all understand what Essex County College is about. So, Dr. Boachi, I ask you to come on and to say a few words for everybody and welcome them here. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning to everyone. I'm glad that at least we are all alive and we've been able to get together this hour to celebrate this special event and also to continue doing the good job that will ensure that it's not only social justice but also economic and other justices that we've been talking about. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome everyone to the kickoff event of Essex County College's annual Black History Month celebration. We certainly could not start the celebration without recognizing the greatest civil rights leader the world has ever known, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, has left a worldwide legacy. It is clearly evident right here at Essex County College. If you are not aware, we have the Martin Luther King Jr. Library on campus. Our campus is bisected by Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and it sits diagonally across from Essex County Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. complex. So we are covered with Dr. Martin Luther King because of the good thing and other initiatives he put together that we are all benefiting today. Just 8 days before he was brutally assassinated on April 4th, 1968, Dr. King came right here to Newark. And during his visit, he spoke to students at South Side, now Malcolm X Shabazz High School, and at several city churches. The work of Dr. King is epitomized in today's Black Lives Matter movement. While Dr. King and other Black leaders were alive, they did not see themselves as above others, but they recognized that they had unique and special talents that could be used to support and empower others. Today, my dear brothers and sisters, are we able to recognize our unique talents and gifts? If so, how are we using the gift to help others? Dr. King had a dream, and we have a mission and vision. Dr. King was not the president of the country, but he never gave up fighting for the poor and the rich, the small and the big, old, young, and even the unborn. What are we doing? My call today as we celebrate this special event is that please join me to empower ECC and our community as a whole through quality education. I just want to thank the College Social Justice Council for planning these recognition events and celebrating the Black History Month in a special way. I also want to thank many ECC organizations and departments sponsoring this program or co-sponsoring these programs. We are proud and we are grateful to all of you to celebrate this Black History Month with us. And I hope that each one of you, as we begin today, you stay together and participate throughout this program and the programs ahead so that we can all see the need to come together, empower one another, and win together. I wish you all the best, and I say God bless you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boachi. We're now going to have a tribute to Cicely Tyson by Ms. Shadiqua Horge.
Hello, good morning again, everyone. Can we just first have a moment of silence for Cicely Tyson, and then we'll go on to tell you a tad bit about Cicely Tyson for those of you who may not know. So let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. A purposeful and pioneering leader with a career spanning several decades, Miss Cicely Tyson served and demonstrated throughout her life a standard of true integrity, grace, dignity, commitment, honor, and maturity. She was a conscious person and an authentic model for Blacks. Did you know that Ms. Tyson took a vow of poverty rather than bow down to the capitalism of Hollywood? She broke the ground for serious African American actors. She refused to play stereotypical roles of criminals, of poor, or downtrodden individuals, or immoral characters, and urged her peers to do the same. She set a standard for Black women to model and always imparted generational knowledge. She was a true treasure, icon, and trailblazer on and off the screen, from roles of Kuta Kinte's mother, Coretta Scott King, Harriet Tubman in A Woman Called Moses, to decades of work as a civil rights leader, board member of the Dance Theater of Harlem, to a school in East Orange, New Jersey, renamed after her, and her being honored by the NAACP. She left a mark that no other will fill. She will truly be missed. Thank you, Miss Cicely Tyson. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And now we're going to ask Dr. Steplight Johnson and Patrice Davis, Professor Patrice Davis, to join us, and they're going to do a tribute for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Professor Davis and Professor Steplight Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, we wanted to share with you a speech that Dr. King wrote and delivered very shortly before his passing, to give you an insight in how his words resonate today. And I wanted to thank Dr. Steplight Johnson for all her assistance in securing many of the images for this presentation. So I'm going to share my screen right now.
I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside. That will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed, so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. True revolution of values will soon look uneasily on the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. With righteous indignation, it will look across the seas and see individual capitalists of the West investing huge sums of money in Asia, Africa, and South America, only to take the profits out with no concern for the social betterment of the countries and say this is not just. It will look at our alliance with the landed gentry of South America and say this is not just. Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hand on the world order and say of war, this way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of peoples normally humane, sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields, physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. America, the richest and most powerful nation in the world, can well lead the way in this revolution of values. That is nothing except a tragic death wish to prevent us from reordering our priorities so that the pursuit of peace will take precedence over the pursuit of war. There is nothing to keep us from molding a recalcitrant status quo with bruised hands until we have fashioned it into a brotherhood. This kind of positive revolution of values is our best defense against communism. War is not one. Communism will never be defeated by the use of atomic bombs and nuclear weapons. Let us not join those who shout war and through their misguided passions urge the United States to relinquish its participation in the United Nations. These are days which demand wise restraint and calm reasonableness. We must not engage in a negative anti-communism, but rather in a positive thrust for democracy. Realizing that our greatest defense against communism is to take offensive action in behalf of justice. We must, with positive action, seek to remove those conditions of poverty, insecurity, and injustice which are the fertile soil in which the seed of communism grows and develops. These are revolutionary times. All over the globe, men are revolting against old systems of exploitation and oppression. And out of the wombs of a frail world, new systems of justice and equality are being born. Shirtless and barefoot people of the land are rising up as never before. People who sat in darkness have seen a great light. We in the West must support these revolutions. Genuine revolution of values means, in the final analysis, that our loyalties must become ecumenical rather than sectional. Every nation must now develop an overriding loyalty to mankind as a whole in order to preserve the best in their individual societies. We can no longer afford to worship the god of hate, or bow before the altar of retaliation. The oceans of history are made turbulent by the ever-rising tides of hate. History is cluttered with the records of nations and individuals that pursued this self-defeating path of hate. As Arnold Toynbee says, love is the ultimate force that makes for the saving choice of life and good against the damning choice of death and evil. Therefore, the first hope in our inventory must be the hope that love is going to have the last word, unquote. We still have a choice today: nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. We must move past indecision to action. We must find new ways to speak for peace in Vietnam and justice throughout the developing world, a world that borders on our doors. If we do not act, we shall surely be dragged down the long, dark, and shameful corridors of time, reserved for those who possess power without compassion, might without morality, and strength without sight.
That's it, guys.
Thank you, Professor Davis and stuff like Johnson. Thank you. At this time, we're going to have one of our very own professors, Linda Carter, and some of her students share some information with us. It is important that we hear from the youth, our future leaders, right, to get their aspect. and also their takeaway from it. That someone put very inspirational. Yes, yes, it was. Thank you, guys. So we're going to have Professor Carter and her students at this time.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Greetings, salutations, and everything like that. So I have a couple students who are going to join us and ask some questions and give us some brief responses based on their knowledge. We have Sandra Cunningham, Elmer, George, John, Margaret, and Sarah. I know I only gave one last name, but it's on their, on their video screen. Okay, so I'm going to start with Sandra Cunningham. Sandra, you here? There's something blocking. Okay, Sandra Cunningham. Okay, Elmer is right in front of me, so I'm going to do Elmer and we'll circle around. So the questions that they'll all be asked to answer is, based on what you learned about Dr. Martin Luther King's work in the area of justice that you learned in grammar school, middle school, high school, and college, do you think that his work is relevant today? So I'm going to start with Elmer. I guess I'll go to George, John, Sarah, and come back to Sandra.
Hello, everybody. Professor, to that question, I think that the issue with racism, oppression, inequality, and morally speaking, evil is a battle that will go on forever. And there will always be people that commit the evil. There will always be people that stay silent. And there will always be the true heroes. Dr. King gave us the hero with whom we can all model after. He also gave us the template to defeat evil through nonviolence, which I think is the most important thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you there, John? Okay.
Morning. Thanks for having me. What's the question, Professor?
Oh, based on what you learned about Martin Luther King, and I know you went to school outside the country, but based on what you learned about him in grammar, middle school, high school, and college, do you think that his body of work surrounding justice is relevant today?
Absolutely. I think that Dr. King did a tremendous amount of work in terms of, bringing to light the issue that, Black and brown people face in the past, and have worked tremendously to try to help to solve those situations. However, although we're not fully there yet, but I think that it kind of model how or shows, the way on how things should be done and how we should be treated and following his steps. And I think that today and also a revolution to make improvement in the way that Black people and all African Americans are being treated in this country are being followed by the model that Dr. Martin Luther King, kind of shows in the past. And I think that that's what we're following today. There has been all the aspect in life that Dr. King also tried to change in terms of how the Bible and things has changed over the years. For example, because of Dr. King's work, you have the Bible that has been translated in at least 900, the New Testament has been translated in almost 900. That there's 900 translation of the New Testament. That's also works of Dr. Luther King. And I think those works, they are kind of relevant and serve us as a roadmap, if you can say, to kind of make changes and for African American in this country.
Oh, do you want to go ahead, Margaret? I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute myself when you called my name.
Oh, you could go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead, Professor Carter?
Sure, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah. So Martin Luther King would have turned 90 this year. Incredible. He was an advocate for political change. He was fearless. He knew he was the target once he took out this position, but his priority wasn't himself. His priority was his community. He organized that side-wide bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks for refusing to obey segregation laws in public buses. which I think is a tremendous step not everybody would do. So for us, we have to continue with his dream by helping others.
Thank you, Sarah. And I believe Margaret's on now.
Yes. All right. So based on the information that I did learn in school, and the information that I do know now, I have realized that the idea of Martin Luther King has been romanticized to be palatable to white America. I found that to be problematic because I see it every day where whenever there is an issue that arises and there is activism, whether it is peaceful protest or violent protests such as looting and such, it is used to police the African American strive, and it is unfortunate. I do find that Martin Luther King word to be very relevant as it was back then, it is today. This is because if you listen to his speeches, whether it is the Three Evils or his letter from Birmingham jail, you would see a lot of relevant ideas that mirror today, such as the idea of democracy being rooted for white America in comparison to dictatorship being pushed towards Black America as white America enjoyed that democracy. And we have to keep fighting for equality for all, not just equality for one, and just keep pushing towards that, and we will eventually make his dream come true.
Okay. Thank you very much, Margaret. Just to go back through all of you really quickly, if you can give me one word that you think describes Dr. Martin Luther King. And I believe we wanted to also have people in the audience to place in the chat a word that they think, based on their knowledge of Dr. Martin Luther King, what they think, what term basically captures the essence of him. So I'll do Elmer again. We'll do the same order that we did. Elmer, John, Margaret, I'm Sarah, and then Margaret. Go ahead, Elmer, you're next.
The phrase that I would use is glorious revolution.
Okay.
If I can explain myself, the glorious revolution was when the transition of power in Great Britain changed from the monarchy to parliament. And it was the end of kings and queens.
Right, so you're right. I'm sorry, the term and explanation, and I forgot to say that to everybody else. So thank you for reminding me, Elmer.
No problem.
John, Michelle, what word or term and why?
I would say revolutionary, because I think that with him, a lot of things has changed. And I think he's a great man that changed, the situation of Black and brown people.
Okay, you're coming in kind of soft, so just wanted to speak up a little bit. Okay, Margaret. Okay, while we're waiting for Margaret, Sarah, what word best describes the essence of Dr. Martin Luther King and why?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah, and then Margaret will go afterwards.
So for me, he was clearly a very successful leader of the African American civil rights movement. And there's just so much more. But for me, when I hear his name, he was just a great leader with his philosophy of nonviolent, great leader.
Okay, thank you very much. Margaret?
I have to be, there we go. All right, so one word that do come to mind when I think about MLK is that he is multifaceted. So as much as we do want to put him on that pedestal, I think we should also remember that there were ideas that majority Black people may have disagree with, or maybe even women may have disagree with, and we should keep that in mind and not hold a human to a godlike idea, but also know that he was flawed, but his ideas were also great, and we should continue that movement.
Thank you, students. That was so great. We really appreciate your input. Because I wasn't your age when Martin Luther King came to Newark, and I live in Newark, I'm from Newark. I was only 13 when Martin Luther King came. And he had started coming to the urban areas around the 1966. By then, the urban areas have been greatly influenced by Malcolm X. So he was coming into territory that Malcolm X had already been through. And remember, for those who don't know, Malcolm X had been executed by that time. So my influence living in the city of Newark, and as we were moving towards this whole drug heroin epidemic, my influence was from Malcolm X, obviously, the Black Panthers, who created the free lunch, the Young Lords, who were responsible for creating clinics to take around neighborhoods, the Nation of Islam, that had the best drug rehab in the country probably today, and also served as our police force, and Amiri Baraka, the father of the mayor of the city of Newark, as they were marching through our community, 502 High Street, from the community, it was called CFUN, Committee for Unified Newark. Also, I was very influenced by young men in my community coming back from Vietnam who were 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And as a result of my conversations with them and spending time with them when I was 11 and 12 years old, I was actually involved in the takeover of our middle school when I was 12 years old, protesting Vietnam. We were, rallying and protesting President Nixon and his attempt to celebrate the war. So, that was basically my influence initially. And so Martin Luther King with the nonviolence, I didn't really understand that, especially in light of the violence of understanding what was going on internationally in Vietnam. I remember asking my mother, why are we saying peace on earth when there's a war going on in 1967? It just, I just couldn't understand what was going on. So my concentration was on stopping war at 12 years old. When I look at it now, when I'm saying, wow, 12 years old, I was marching on the war. But later I came to realize Martin and realize that he was just as revolutionary and radical as Malcolm X. He just did it in another way. People have neutered Martin Luther King, and they've also neutered Malcolm X. And they've given this impression of them that is not quite accurate. People change. He was 26 when he did, I think he was 26 when he did I Have the Dream. He was 39 when he died. He was a different person at that time. And especially coming up, when people talk about nonviolence, they don't really realize that the nonviolence was, the movement involved training, very strategic and tactical training. It required training of people mentally, physically, and spiritually to be able to navigate and negotiate people spitting on you, slapping you in the face, pulling your hair, pushing you down. It takes a certain amount of training to be able to get to that. And people don't really, talk about that. The other part of the neutralizing of Martin Luther King was the day of service. It's not to say people should not be, helping the homeless, but that's not what King was looking at. He was looking at how we change the structure of this society so we don't have homeless, we don't have poverty, we don't have, people getting evicted and the things that are happening today. He wanted to change the structure of society. That was what service was to him. He was a social democrat like Bernie Sanders, which is really a Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And for those who don't remember, he was the president who made the wealthy people pay 95 cents on a dollar in taxes so that you can have a middle class and Social Security and unemployment. So, I came to realize when he talked about revolution of values, that he was talking about changing the structure. And as a result of that, what happened, he was a marked man. And he knew he was a marked man. He knew that once he became anti-war, that was a problem. Many of you may not know that a lot of the Black preachers abandoned him at that time because they said, Martin, don't talk about the war, just talk about the fountains in the South. So that was a problem. So when he starts to talk about the military, and today we spend, for every dollar you make, 61 cents of that dollar goes to war. That would not be what Martin or Malcolm would want, for that matter. So once he started talking about the militarization, he was messing with people's money. And when you start messing with the money, you're a dead man walking. And he became a dead man walking, but he was willing to take that hit. As Sarah said, he was willing to take that hit for the big picture. It wasn't about him. He came out of a we society, not a me society. Money was not his God. Because if it was, he would not have been able to accomplish anything he did. So while I was not necessarily into Martin Luther King when he started, because I didn't know enough about him, but as I learned about him, he was true revolutionary. Unfortunately, people have neutered him. And I encourage young people to not just go along with your teachers say. I always tell my students, don't believe anything I say, do your own homework. Read his speeches, read what he had to say. Learn as much about him as you can, and any of the other people. And you'll find out that many of these people were very young. Diane Nash, which is not mentioned, she was part of the, when you talk about the bus, taking people, going to the lunch count, she's 24 years old.
Thank you very much.
This whole, so I just wanted to, let people know at the end of the day that he was the revolutionary. He wasn't the neutered, I have a dream king.
Okay. Thank you very much. We give Professor Carter a virtual round of applause. Now we have a quick poll for you to respond to. If you can fill it out, it's an anonymous poll. Which version of King do you know? And so you have what the students talked about, you have what Dr. Carter talked about, and plus other things. So go ahead and give your responses. And then we're going to move into, but now we're going to go and we're going to talk about and show you another elder, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who was a Black Puerto Rican. He was a reverend. He was elected to Congress. And while I set it up, Professor Carter, if you have anything else you want to say, it takes me 2 seconds to set it up.
Okay, just real quick. He was also the architect of financial aid. He was fourth in line to be the president of the United States in 1947 or early 1950s. And he was in charge of all the tax money for the country. And that became a problem for him. So I think it's important people know. The last thing, if you notice, he's very light. And in that time, there was a history of people passing, if they were light enough, from being Black to crossing over to be white, because it was so horrible to be a Black person in America. So listen to Adam Clayton Powell.
As I know here, you're in trouble, where it says about 30% are unemployed. That's why I'm working hard to get this surplus food here. Some of you say to me, well, I'm not like you. I'm not a congressman. I haven't got education. I haven't got work. But you're a human being. And you know what you've got? You've got in your hand the power to use your vote and to use even those few cents you get from welfare to spend them only where you want to spend them. A young slave boy stood one day before the greatest ruler of his day. And God said to Moses, "What's in your hand?" And Moses said, "Lord, only I've got a stick, that's all." He said, "Well, let me use what's in your hand." And God used that slave boy with a stick in his hand to divide the Red Seas, march through a wilderness, bring water out of rocks, manna from heaven, and bring his people to Freedom Land. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? George Washington Carver, who was so frail that he was traded for a broken down horse as a slave boy. And George Washington Carver, sitting in the science laboratory at Tuskegee, told me, he said, "Dr. Powell," he said, "I just go out in the fields each morning at 5 o'clock, and I let God guide me. And I bring back these little things and work them over my laboratory." And that man did more to revolutionize the agricultural science of peanuts and of cotton and sweet potato than any other human being in the field of agricultural science. What's in your hand? Just let God use you, that's all. What's in your hand? I've got a string in my hand, that's all, and I'm flying a kite. And way up in the heaven's lightning strikes it, and I, Benjamin Franklin, discover for the first time the possibilities of electricity with a string in my hand. What's in your hand, little hunchback sitting in a Roman jail? I haven't got anything in my hand but an old quill pen, but God says, write what I tell you to write. Paul wrote, I have run my race with patience. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Henceforth is laid up in me a What's in your hand, little boy? All I've got is a slingshot. And the enemies of my people are great and big and more numerous than we are. Well, little David, go down to the brook and pick out a few stones and come on back and close your eyes if you want to and pull back that slingshot and let it go. And David killed the biggest enemy, the leader of the giants, against his people, and his people became free, just letting God guide a stone in his hand. And a few years passed, and David is a king. And God says, what's in your hand? He said, I've got a harp in my hand. He said, well, David, play on your harp. And he played, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Leadeth me beside still waters. Yea, though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? Man hanging on a cross. I've got 2 nails in my hand. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraws thyself from me, whither shall I go? And that man with 2 nails in his hand split history in half, BC and AD. And what's in your hand tonight, people of Cambridge? You've got God in your hand, and he'll let you win because he's on your side and one with God, always in the majority. So walk with him and talk with him and work with him and stick together and fight together. And with God's hand in your hand, the victory will be accomplished here sooner than you dreamed, sooner than you hoped, sooner than you prayed for, sooner than you imagined. Good night and God bless you.
Thank you. That was extremely powerful. And I think that will lead us into our second session next week, which is talking about the power of one. How you have the power, what's in your hand? You have the power to spark change, to spark a new movement. But also I want to circle back real quick to Professor Carter. I know we gave Professor Carter a round of applause, but I really want to give the students a round of applause. Our students eloquently articulated themselves. I know some of them may have been scared at the beginning, but they did a phenomenal and wonderful job. We also have George. She stated who there were some technical difficulties, who wants to speak again. Again, our students, our leaders are here. They're representing, they're powerful, they are strong, and we truly appreciate you guys. So we're gonna ask George and Linda to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Hello,
Okay,
can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. George knows the
right.
question and he's well versed on it. So George is actually, just real quick, I call him an old soul. He's been here 2 times before. So, okay, George.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm not one of Miss Linda Carter's actual students in the school, but I met her in the school and I became a life student pretty much. But as far as like Martin Luther King, I feel as though everybody remembers him for his accomplishments within civil rights, you know, in the bus boycotts, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But then there's little emphasis that is placed on his call for the reconstruction of like American capitalism, you know. So he was pretty much like taking on the American superpower and really calling for the redistribution of wealth within the country. You know, identifying that poverty was one of the 3 evils that was needed to be like confronted as well. And Martin Luther King was a phenomenal leader who shouldn't be diluted, even though, you know, the history books within grammar school, elementary, high school, they do tend to dilute him to the I have a dream speech. And then it really forces people to not take it upon themselves to find out who he was, what he really stood for and who he was working for and what he was working towards, you know. And then we should pretty much just study him completely, not only to remember him, but for the strategical benefits and purposes as well. You know, and if I had to categorize him with one word, I would say courageous, because in order to take on America and mess with the money, you have to be courageous in order to do those type of things. Realizing that, you know, and he also realized, you know, I'm not going to make it to the mountaintop, as we say, but he was willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good of not only, you know, minorities and black people, but for poor people, and as he stated, Appalachian whites. And, you know, right before his death, you know, they were planning the Poor People's March on Washington, where he was claiming they were going to collect their checks, you know, making sure that poor people had a place within the community and weren't just tossed aside.
Thank you, George. That
Excellent.
was very good. Very good. Thank you so much.
Phenomenal.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
All right, with that, I want to now share with you the results from the poll. Let me see if it will, yeah, share results. There's your poll. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, good. There you go. So what people know is the I Have a Dream 48 out of 50, I think it was 55 people said what they know about King is I Have a Dream speech. So hopefully today they got a little something other than the I Have a Dream speech in terms of what they know about King. We also want to say that ECC is a foundational point, and I'm putting in the chat right now that you will see that you can go and look at the 50th anniversary. The link is there, and it gives you insight about Essex County College. There's a lot of videos there. I think there's 4 parts or 5 parts to the total thing, and it will give you some insights into ECC. You'll see one of our former presidents, Dr. Yamba, and he and others will talk about how ECC came into being. And I think those are some great insights for you all to look at in terms of that. Before we get to our final part, I want to take one more minute to also place in the chat again all the folks who were part of this yes. So if you look in the chat, you'll see that this event was co-sponsored by Academic Affairs, the Adjunct Faculty Association, the Africana Institute, Criminal Justice Program, the Institutional Advancement Paralegal Studies Program, Social Sciences Division, the Student Development and Career Services, Student Services, Student Life and Activities, and a wealth of other folks. If I miss anyone, it's not intentional, but I appreciate all of the entities that were involved. Also, I want to thank Dr. Boachi for joining us and giving us a welcome. I want to thank Shadiqua Horge for helping us on the planning committee, Linda Carter, Patrice Davis. Thank Kiana for doing the graphics for us. And did I miss anybody? Linda, Patrice, or Shadiqua?
Just the students.
Yes, and the students. And so we thank you all for being involved. And on our way out today, we're gonna have another little quick speech by King, but make sure you tune in next week. Next week on Wednesday, we're going to be at 11:30. The following week, we're going to be on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And then for those students in the evening on the 26th, we're going to be in the evening at 7 o'clock. So this is just part of it. There's a lot of other stuff going on here at the college that's going on outside of even the things that we're doing here. And I'm going to be posting some other stuff that the Africana Institute is doing. So I encourage you all to be engaged, keep your eyes open, and share the events with other folks. Thank everybody again. And now we have a final clip from Martin Luther King Jr. This clip is going to be is a great one, because what it does is it shows an interview he had with NBC. So here's this clip here.
So in the quest for integration, I think we can offer our whole nation something, because there are three evils in our nation. It's not only racism, but economic exploitation of poverty would be one, and then militarism. And I think in a sense, and in a very real sense, these three are tied inextricably together, and we aren't going to get rid of one without getting rid of the other.
When you stood on the Lincoln Memorial that day in August, '63, and you said, "I had a dream," did that dream envision that you would see a war in Asia, preventing the federal government doing for the Negroes, preventing the society doing for the Negroes that which you think had to be done?
No, I didn't envision that then. I must confess that that period was a great period of hope for me. And I'm sure for many others all across the nation, many of the Negroes who had about lost hope, saw a solid decade of progress in the South. And in 1954, which was, 64, 1963, 9 years after the Supreme Court's decision to be in the March on Washington, meant a great deal. It was a high moment, a great watershed moment. But I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul-searching and agonizing moments, and I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long way to go, and that we are involved in a war on Asian soil, which, if not checked and stopped, can poison the very soul of our nation.
Dr. King, even if there had not been a war in Asia, would you still not have had this nightmare insofar as the Negro movement for equality then touched on two things that the white community holds sacred: their children and their property?
Oh, I have no doubt that we would have encountered great difficulties, great problems of resistance if the war had not been in existence. So that I'm not going to say that all of our problems will be solved if the war in Vietnam is ended. But I do say that the war makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with these problems. When a nation becomes obsessed with the guns of war, it loses its social perspective, and programs of social uplift suffer. This is just a fact of history, so that we do face many more difficulties as a result of the war. It's much more difficult to really arouse a conscience during a time of war. I noticed the other day, some weeks ago, a Negro was shot down in Chicago, and it was a clear case of police brutality. That was on page 30 of the paper, but on page 1 at the top was 780 Viet Cong killed. That is something about a war like this that makes people insensitive. It dulls the conscience. It strengthens the forces of reaction, and it brings into being bitterness and hatred and violence, and it strengthens the military-industrial complex of our country, and it's made our job much more difficult, because I think we can go along with some programs, if we didn't have this war on our hands, that would cause people to adjust to new developments, just as they did in the South. They said they'd never ride the bus with us. Blood would flow in the streets. They wouldn't go to school and all of these things. But when people came to see that they had to do it because the law insisted, they finally adjusted. And I think white people all over this country will adjust once the nation makes it clear that in schools and housing, we've got to learn to live together as brothers. I think the biggest problem now is that we got our gains over the last 12 years at bargain rate, so to speak. Didn't cost the nation anything. In fact, it helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations. It didn't cost the nation anything to get the right to vote established. And now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something.
All right, and that's it for today. We thank you all very much. This was a wonderful program, and we're at the point where the conversation is returning back to where it was. So today on the dais for the United States is the discussion about reparations, and so then reparations is a important point, and you see that Martin Luther King Jr. was pointing us right in that direction. So thank everybody once again, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Miss David.
Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.